Record. Okay. Welcome to Business Mastery Insights, where our mission is to provide you with timely, provocative, and actionable resources that inspire, promote, and accelerate your quest for business excellence. Today's program is part 3 of the 5 steps to planning. We've done part 2 and part 1 in the past, and I'll review each of those right at the outset, and then we'll dive into the last part, which really includes the last 3 steps of the 5-step planning process that we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to share my screen with this right there. Okay, you guys should be, are you able to see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I've gone through the welcome. Quick overview is when we talk about planning actually covers a very wide spectrum. And people, it's kind of what I call a container word. What I mean by that is that the word planning has a variety of different connotations for a variety of different people. All kinds of container words do that, where when you say something, people make a bunch of assumptions about what that word means based on their past experience, and it may not be the one that you're intending on. So, for example, people can plan a party or a vacation or a career move and things like that. In the business environment, it's also a container word because often, if you're in a situation in your business where you might need to raise capital, for example, you would produce what's called a business plan. Now, I used to be in the investment banking business. I've seen a ton of those. I had a meeting last night with a colleague of mine. They're in the process of raising capital now for a company called Cheerly. Cheerly, I think it's Cheerly, I can't remember the name, and they're producing a business plan which includes a elaborate projection, all filled with the risks of the investment, filled with resumes and biographies of the key players, the org charts, things like that. The idea is to present something to an environment where you can effectively, hopefully, raise some capital from a bank or from investors. And I've got one that just came in today for a company up in the Pacific Northwest, and they're in the cannabis business, doing around $60 million, and they're looking to expand, so they build a business plan. That's not what we're talking about. The business plan we're talking about here is the kind of plan that you'd put in place. Sorry, I should have delayed saving the screen. Sharing the screen. So what they need is a plan that's going to say, we'd like you to invest, and so here's the evidence about why you should do that. But we're not going to be doing that. We're talking about how to build one to run your business. So let's go. I'm going to have to go back. No, I got it. Okay. So let's move on to the 5 steps of planning. And specifically, where have you been? Where are you now? Effectively, exactly at this moment. Where are you going? And on our purposes, we're talking about for the next year. How are you going to get there? Tactically, if you will. And then finally, when are the due dates? So those are the 5 steps for planning. Frankly, most people don't have even that much in their mind when they start the planning. If they're going to plan at all, often people simply start with what they're going to be doing over the next X period of time in order to get, if you will, they're on the plane to go on their vacation. We need, in a business environment, to do the first 2 steps first. And then we can talk about where we're going to go next. So let's review the first 2 steps. Step one really has 2 primary components, and I'm going to call them, for purposes of right now, I'm going to call them, if you will, long past, and then the second one is last year. So long past, you do not have to do that every single year. But if for example, this is the first year that you're doing your planning, business planning, which I like to call a game plan. When you're building your game plan for the upcoming year, and this is the first time you've ever done it, well, then we need to go back and harvest the long past. I run a couple of podcasts. I've got one coming up tomorrow. Got a guest coming on, and in his particular case, he's the fifth generation of a family business that runs a resort hotel, and his business literally started in 1899. So when we first did planning with that company called Campbell's Resort, we started back at 1899, and we built what we call I call it a timeline. And it's literally a physical line drawn on a whiteboard or on like we're doing now on a computer screen or whatever. And so most of the people listening to us now on LinkedIn, most people on LinkedIn don't have a business that started 122 years ago. They have one that maybe started 100 years ago. No, but most people have businesses that have a relatively short time frame. I'm talking maybe a decade or less. And so the time frame would basically be simply the beginning up to now. And the best way to do it is to go through an exercise that I call milestones. And so the first milestone would be founding of the business. And so that would be effectively end up being the very first thing. And I like to use a alphanumeric numbering system. So we would simply number that, for example, either A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, or a combination thereof. So we could certainly say, because we could remember distinctly when the company was founded, and typically that's number 1. Now, the order of building the timeline and the magic of using the line technique is that you don't have to think of things in order. Instead, just think of milestones. Like, for example, last year, number 2. So number 2, last year, we got our PPP loan from the federal government. So that would have been a milestone. We got our PPP loan. Now, that wasn't the second thing that happened. It was the second thing that you remembered. And so build the list, plot them on the line, add to the list, plot them on the line, add to the list, plot them on the line. When you're done with all of that, you'll have all these milestones. And then once that's done, you could look at, oftentimes this happens, you'll find that, gee, things that were pretty spectacular 4 years ago, for some reason or other, stopped happening. We used to have a newsletter, a physical newsletter we sent out to all of our customers. Everybody loved it. And then for some reason we stopped it. Well, that's a good thing, for example, to take a note of. So that's how you would build step 1, inception to date. Build a list, number it somehow, and plot it on the line. It'll give you all kinds of, it'll have all kinds of purposes. The About Us page on your website, marketing materials, onboarding experience for new employees, where you would convert that into maybe a presentation by the owner or by the chief executive. And when people come on board, you say, watch this video, and then they'll be brought up to date since the beginning of time. This is extremely valuable. The alternative is you hire somebody new, they sit in front of you or the hiring manager, and they say, well, this is the history of our company. And every single time it's something new. I just got off the phone with a private client of mine, and he was talking about how he was concerned because his company has a third of his employees in in Brazil, another third in Argentina, and another third in the United States. And so he needs to make sure that all of those people from all over, if you will, North and South America, get the same story. And so that's another value, if you will, of doing the long past review. You need to do it once. Then every year, though, you need to do last year. And really what we're doing when we do last year is we're looking at, I like to use this technique, and that is successes and failures. Get successes and failures, get them listed, and then next, lessons learned for each of those. So just think of the successes that happened to the company last year, and then the lessons learned. Sometimes there's one lesson, sometimes there are multiple ones, and just list the lessons that took place. Now, out of the next part of that is what I call potential initiatives. Potential initiatives. And that, well, the key is the word potential, meaning that everything that's written down is not something that you want to do. Everything that's written down is not something that you want to do. And that's vital, but we do want to record this list. So it needs to be someplace like a flip chart, piece of flip chart paper, or another section on the whiteboard if you're in a room with a whiteboard, or some other way of documenting the potential initiatives. And that's pretty much what you do for the previous year. Step 2, which is where are we now? We need to go through a series of what I call scans. And by scans, I mean we're going to look at 3 aspects of your business environment. And I simply call these inside, outside, and then environment. Inside, outside, environment. So inside would basically be reviewing what's going right and what's going wrong. So let's call them pluses and minuses, or what's the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and threats, a SWOT analysis, or the successes and failures. Those 3 scans should pretty well do it. So when I say inside, here's what I mean. Inside. You want to look at people. I'll call it resources, which would include such things as capital, money, physical, like space, supplies, vendors, excuse me, not vendors, that comes in the next block, on-hand resources, technology, things like that, globally called resources. And then the third thing was what I'll call processes. So we're looking at the inside, and we want to do a scan of the pluses and minuses, among our people. We can do a SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats relative to our people. We can do a strengths and weaknesses relative to our people as a group, not necessarily individual people. But you could certainly, in this scan, identify the potential stars or the current stars that have an opportunity of growing, and potential people that need to be somehow or another managed out of the business. Same thing with resources, same thing with processes. The objective is to produce a list of potential initiatives. Now, once again, we're trying to do the scan to identify some initiatives, things that we can do in the upcoming year to make things better. And they will be all over the ballpark in this list, as you can imagine now. After we did the long scan and now we're doing last year, this list can be getting long, and that's good. We want everything listed. Then we want to go outside. Outside includes vendors, suppliers, similar, competitors, customers, partners, etc. All those kind of things that are outside do the same thing. What are the pluses and minuses? What are the strengths and weaknesses? What are the successes and failures relative to vendors? When you finish with all of that, you add to your list of potential initiatives. As you can see, the list is getting longer and longer. Now, next comes environment. That includes things like the government, economics, industry, etc. So just think of, these are not people that you're directly having day-to-day interactions with. But unfortunately, the government probably is somebody you are having direct interaction with, but I like to call them the environment, meaning that you have a very hard time of actually influencing the government. You have a very hard time of actually influencing macroeconomics, taxes, things like that. You have a very hard time of actually influencing your industry, etc. Now, you have a difficult time, but not an extremely hard time of influencing your vendors and your customers and your suppliers and partners and things like that. So, but still, we want to go through looking at the pluses and minuses, the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats, etc., in all of these areas, so we can add to our list of potential initiatives. Okay, so that's the review of step 1 and step 2. So it's the inception of our business until today timeline orientation. Last year, it's the last 12 months typically, and we're doing scans looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, strengths and weaknesses, and, if you will, pluses and minuses that you can observe in the areas inside, outside, in the overall environment that you're in. All of those produce this list, which is growing and growing and growing, of potential initiatives. And that gets us to our next step, which is, where are we going? Now, actually, last week, I guess it was, or a couple of weeks ago, when we did part 2 of our 5 steps to planning, we did touch on a little bit on this point here. But so I'm going to kind of cheated into step 3 a little bit when I covered that last time. So this is all going to be basically new material, what we're talking about today. So the first thing is vision, mission, and values. So vision would be a picture. I used the concept of a picture of the future. And I'm not against at all what some people call vision statements, which is like a sentence that might say something like, we'll be the preeminent digital watchmaker on the planet in 5 years. Fine. That's okay with me. But what I am talking about here is something entirely different, and it's a vision picture. So what it is, it's a story. The responsibility of developing this is the owner or CEO or chief executive of the business. And the idea is to paint a picture of what the future is going to look like. And we're going to do that by first, listen, let's imagine most of you listening to us, either inside CEO Alliance or on my LinkedIn business mastery page or on my YouTube channel. Most of you are business owners. So this is your job. And a lot of people have a hard time coming up with what the future is going to look like, let's say 5, 6, 7, 10 years out. And I find that there's 2 ways to do it. And I've got a whole training on all of this, but I'm going to give you a top level view right now. And that is that one is if you're good at dreaming, then the way to do it is to get yourself someplace isolated, on a boat, someplace in your yard, someplace quiet, and just say, if I didn't have any barriers in front of me, didn't need anything, what would the future look like in 5 years? What would our revenue be? What kind of people would we have? What kind of awards and medals and press releases would we have? Where would we line up among all of our competitors? What would we be known for, etc.? So you can sit there and just write down these thoughts that occur to you as you sit there thinking about some of those kinds of concepts. The second technique is to basically transport yourself into the future. So the way to do that is to say, okay, I'm just going to float up. I'm going to get in this time tunnel and I'm going to blast off into the future 5 years, and then say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our company meeting, and I'm going to tell people what happened over the last 5 years. So then, instead of dreaming about it, you'd actually be kind of writing your speech. You'd say, hey, welcome to our 5th year anniversary, or whatever it happens to be, whatever the occasion is. Over the last 5 years, we've grown from this revenue to that revenue. We've had the following key hires, and I'd like to recognize them now. They're right here in the room. Janice and Joyce and Fritz. And welcome to the company. And here's why we brought them in. Here's how I brought them in. This is what they do. So 2 techniques. One is to dream about the future from now, or 2, transport yourself into the future and give a speech. The idea of that would be when you come to, let's imagine you're doing a meeting where you're doing the planning, you'd come to the meeting and you'd present your vision. Second is mission. Some people call this purpose, and that's fine. What is it? Now we're talking about really having a sentence. So you want a sentence that explains why your company exists. Something like, you don't have to say this word, but I'll use it for context here. We exist to solve laser manufacturers' difficulties with gaskets. There's your mission. We exist to solve laser manufacturers' difficulties with gaskets. Now, what you've done with that mission is you've excluded manufacturers of anything else. You've excluded all kinds of parts besides the gaskets. Anybody hearing what you say would say, okay, I know what you guys do. You guys solve problems with gaskets and laser machines. Perfect. That's a mission statement. So the way this would work is often people already have one. So what I like to do is I like to write up the mission statement and then go through it word by word, the keywords in the mission statement, and describe or discuss how well you're living up to the mission, if you will. So, are you dealing with laser manufacturers? Are you solving problems for laser manufacturers? How good are you doing? Are you focusing in on gaskets, or have you allowed yourself to drift off into other stuff like lubricants or something? So either you need to change your mission statement to fit what you're doing, or stop what you're doing in order to fit the mission statement. And so that exercise is very engaging and usually takes 30 minutes or so, because most companies, frankly, aren't living up to their mission statement. So that's kind of the second thing you do. Third thing are values. In fact, I mentioned this company that I talked about, happened coincidentally to talk about earlier today, who had a third of his employees in Argentina, a third in Brazil, and a third in the United States. So it's extremely important for this company to nail down their values, because you've got 3 different countries with their own, if you will, value system that they've grown up with in their physical environment. And so then you'd go through and make sure that the values you have in your company fit the actual people that need to live up to it. And if they don't, you got to either change your values, or you've got to figure out how to get people to buy into and live by the values. So that's the first thing you do. Second thing we do, and this is critical, is this term top 5. Remember back that I had us build a long list of potential initiatives, and they're all numbered 1, 2, 3, 26, 29, 41, 46. It's a big list. Many companies say, we'll just take care of 41 things. And then a year later, they come back and they have the same 41 things, because there was no way in the world to focus. So if I'm facilitating a planning meeting, and I do many, then we're going to narrow in to 5. And my favorite tool, if we're doing it physically in a room, and you can do this now with, there's many tools that allow you to do something similar to this. And I basically hand out to each person 5 votes. And if we're in a physical room, I like to use stickers. The things that you get on a sheet of paper and you hand out to and the kindergarten kids stick them on their foreheads and wrists and hands. Those stickers stick wonderfully to a whiteboard. And so everybody has their 5, their little strip of 5, if you will. And the job of each individual in the room is to go up to the whiteboard and put stickers on their personal top 5. Lo and behold, we'll start seeing certain initiatives stand out. People who are just using their intuition, really. We're not going to discuss 41 things. We're just going to vote. When we're done, we're going to have, sometimes if we're lucky, 5 will clearly stand out. Sometimes we end up with 6 or 7. End up with 6 or 7, then we do a little negotiation, combining sometimes of number 11, number 15, rewrite them so they'll fit into something. We end up with 5 initiatives, objectives combined. Most of these they're like a little project. They have a lot of things to do, and I'll cover that in a minute how are we going to get these 5 things done. I'm going to talk about that before we finish up today. Next, vital driver goals. Once again, I'm not going to go deeply into this. I've often covered this topic in great detail in various places, including inside the CEO Alliance. There's many assets in there. Just simply go and search up at the search bar, search vital drivers, and up come a bunch of resources. You can figure all this stuff out. But in general, vital drivers could be simply explained as follows. Best way to picture it is to envision a cockpit of a 737 Boeing airliner. And if you walk into the cockpit, there's all these gauges that are measuring everything imaginable, hundreds of these gauges, and they measure everything. Now, the question is, if you're taking off the plane, do you need to be concerned with how close to your destination you are? No, you do not. You're on the ground. And so what they do in these airplanes is they have what they call a pop-up display that pops up in front of the pilot and co-pilot that are relative to the point in time they're dealing with, in this case, the takeoff. So inside business, I developed 3 years ago now, the concept of a vital driver dashboard. Now, you may or may not know what KPIs are. They stand for key performance indicators. Big corporations, they got not hundreds, thousands of key performance indicators. They got teams of people keeping track of all of that. I'm not against any of that. Not against it. Just like I wasn't against a single sentence vision. But what I'm going to say to you is you can't run a business that way. The way you run a business is you have a vital driver dashboard. So you got to take the KPIs and sort them up until you have what's vital. And typically, any company, and I've got many 100 million, 200, 500 million, billion-dollar companies that I work with, all of them use a single one-sheet vital driver dashboard. Typically has 12 to maybe 16 vital drivers. So what's the word vital mean? So if you think about a human body, vital is a brain, not vital is a hand. Vital is a liver, not vital is a right eye. Now, I know that sounds cruel, mean, awful, but the truth is they're not vital. But you cannot survive without a liver. It just won't happen. You cannot survive without a brain. So what you need to do is go through your business and identify the 12 to 15 vital key performance indicators that you need. Often it's things like revenue. In fact, I maintain that every organization, revenue is vital. So that's typically number one on most vital driver dashboards. Number two, probably we need some sort of measurement of profit in order to stay in business. So it could be net profit or gross margin or something similar to that. Then there's other things like productivity. I had a client on Monday, he'd elevated one of his employees up to making about $350,000 a year. And he said, am I really getting my value from that employee? Is that employee delivering, at least paying for herself, or am I getting a multiple? So he's thinking through precisely properly, and that is this person vital for his business at this point in time? He didn't have a conclusion yet, but the concept of that is important. So maybe something like productivity, i.e. gross payroll or total payroll, including salaries, benefits, bonuses, etc. What's the ratio between that total payroll and revenue? Maybe that's vital. Maybe it's vital to have that number. In fact, maybe you can get into the industry and find out what the industry number is. Let's say that the industry average is 2.3. the revenue in your this industry is 2.3 times payroll. Okay, fine. So if you want to be average, you'd hit a 2.3. If you want to do better than average, you would opt for something better than 2.3. And that, we'll get to that in a moment, but that vital driver would be revenue, the ratio of revenue to payroll. In any event, well, I won't dig into it deeply now, but you need to identify somewhere between 12 and 16 vital drivers by name. Next in step 3 is resources. So where are we going? We need to assemble, if you will. Once we've decided on our top 5 initiatives, we've decided on our vital driver goals. Do we have all the capital we need? Money? Do we have cash in the bank? Do we have access to investors? Do we have access to debt? Do we have the equipment we need? Do we have the technology and the systems and the people? And maybe there's a few more that I haven't gone through. Yeah, I would probably include processes. Technology would be, software would be in there, actual tools, machines, etc. Probably another one would be facilities. So you'd list these out, the resources that you would need by group. And then what we need to do after we list them by group is identify the specifics. What do we specifically need in each of these areas in order to accomplish our top 5 initiatives, to hit all of our vital driver goals, and to get on our path towards our vision, make sure we're fulfilling our mission, and do it within our corporate values. In other words, if a value is integrity, probably stealing something would not be a good technique. So, by the way, it brings me to another point, kind of a sideline or a side point here. A lot of businesses, if they do plan, and I say that emphatically because unfortunately, the vast majority don't. Vast majority of businesses are ad hoc businesses, meaning that they just enter in, they open up the door or walk into a new day, and whatever happens, happens. And that's a typical business. But if the ones that do plan, many of them plan from a position of, if you will, lack. They plan from constraint. By that I mean, they look at the resources they have available, like, for example, not a big enough space. Okay. For example, not having an office in Argentina. For example, not having money. All of those resources should not be a constraint. No resource should be a constraint. What we do first is decide where we're going to go, and then we get the resources. And if you get that right, then remarkable things happen, because everything on this list, you can beg, you can borrow, or you, in kind of in quotes, teasing a bit, you can steal. All of these things. For example, I think I can say every one of my clients during the pandemic was able to get a freeze on their rent from the landlord. 0 rent. Every one of my clients, without exception, was able to get reductions in their supplies, in everything that they were buying from their vendors, who were happy to reduce their prices. They were able to get customers to pay them faster. They were able to get vendors to give them better terms and better prices. So plan first, then get the resources is kind of the the key point there. Okay, all of that's done. And we go on to step 5 and 6. Step 5 is basically how are we going to, oops, use the wrong pen here. I'm just crossing it out. I want to use this. How are we going to get it there? Three things, really. Number one, remember these top 5 initiatives here? Oop. What we need is we need to put together people who are going to make sure those happen. And those are called SET teams, S-E-T, Strategic Execution Team, requires a leader and a team. Sometimes one person, sometimes a little company, one person does all of this stuff. But if you have the luxury of a business that has leaders and teams, then you put them together. I call the leader a champion typically, and the team would be the team members. Cross-functional teams are really good, depending on what the initiative is. So, for example, an initiative could be, for example, to build to rebuild the website. Might be an initiative that makes it to the top 5. Another initiative that makes it to the top 5 is to produce a 401k benefit or something like that. So we would need somebody that's the champion of the initiative, and then people that are going to be contributors. And they would do that through a tool that I invented back in the day called Strategic Execution Team, that's put together to make sure that the individual initiatives are in fact managed, not just listed on the list. It's one thing to have 41 things on the list and none of them get done, but it's crazy to whittle it down to 5 and then not assign people to get it done. By assigning, getting people to make the commitment to finish it. Then after that's all done, then we need what I call subordinate planning. So we're in the midst of, I'm describing how you would go about planning for an entire company, but many companies have finance department, they have a marketing department, they have a production department, they have a sales department, etc. Human resources department. Plus, they've got the 5 initiatives. No more than 5. You don't have to have 5, by the way. So those are what I call subordinate to the company, and they also need to go through where has this initiative been? What's the current state of the 401k? Where are we going with the 401k? How are we going to get there? We're going to do this, 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 and this. And what's our due dates? All of these subordinate plans need that same 5-step process associated with them. Okay, so that's that. Next, we need the individuals in the company. And if there's a large enough company, probably this planning at the corporate level is just the management team or the senior leadership team, something like that. But they need individual goals. And so we just list the individual goals, go around the room. Each person comes up with their annual goals. Whatever they're going to do, that's the result. What's the result of the year? And you, the chief financial officer. So you collect all of those. So that's step 5. And then we go on to step 6, which is simply when are we going to get there? And all we need to do now, and it's all that's really left, is to assign the key 30, 60, 90-day or initiative duration goals. So we would have those listed out and just simply due dates. All of the various goals that have been listed have just this will be done by April 14th, and this will be done by March 27th, and this will be done by September 9th. This will be done by year end, etc. Next, and probably the key part of the, if you will, planning event is to put monthly goals on the Vital Driver dashboard. So how would that look? So let's just, I'm going to give you a quick illustration, and then we'll wrap up the meeting here. So quick illustration of the Vital Driver dashboard. Now, early on, we came up with the vital goals. So, for example, revenue might be on it, revenue. So we have a vital goal over here. In the goal, let's just pick a number and say it's going to be 2.5 million. That's the goal for the year. Now, you should do this month by month by month by month, but I'm going to just do it Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Q4 equals that number. So 2.5. In order to get that 2.5, we're going to do, hopefully this add up. I'm going to do 750, a million. Oh, I'm going too fast. This is most likely, unless we get a seasonal company. 750, a million, we're 1,750,000, and then well, you get the idea. Hopefully, I'm just a bad mathematician, but you'd spread out these goals. Something like this: 500, 600, 700, the balance in the fourth quarter. And that equals 2.5 million. Then I mentioned earlier, one might be the revenue per employee, or revenue as a percentage of a ratio of payroll. And this one, the reason I want to show you this one is this one could be what I call a factor. In other words, the goal may be the same month after month after month. And let's just say that the objective in your organization is 2.5. So you want to have the payroll be able to be multiplied by 2.5. So in this case, the payroll would be 1 million. So a $1 million payroll would be producing this 2.5. So that's the way you would do that. Now that would be all 12 or 16 vital drivers all would have a goal in dollars, in percents, in numbers, in ratios, etc., spread out across the entire year. So, kind of in review, 5 steps to planning. Where have we been since inception till now? Then where have we been? Where were we last year? Next piece would be, where are we right now? We go through a scan, looking at inside, outside in the environment, gathering up the strengths and weaknesses and so forth. Both of those exercises are designed to generate potential initiatives or projects for the next year. We then go through an exercise to whittle them down to the top 5. We go on to step 3, where are we going? And so that includes revisiting vision, mission, values, coming up with our vital drivers, identifying our top 5 initiatives, figuring out the resources we need, etc. Then how are we going to get there? That would include going through all of these various things, including, and I didn't really cover this, you go through the resources that you need and have a plan for how you're going to get them. So for example, if you need a rent reduction, how are we going to get that rent reduction? Who's going to be responsible for that? Once that's done, That's done. We're going to then assign due dates and we're done for the day. Now, typically, if this is a larger organization, let's just say 10 million, we probably will end up doing this over one day for the company, and the next morning we'd finish all the initiatives and all of the departments simultaneously, and then we would have a reconciliation hour where each of the departments or initiatives, the champions would present their plan, and the other people would basically give some input about, yeah, we agree, we accept that, or they would give some input akin to, no, it ain't going to work for us. We need to stop that. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing. And there's only two of you who are able to ask me some questions. And so we've got another probably 6 minutes. So Nick, any questions?
Yeah, I'm taking copious notes here. I'm
Okay.
guessing a couple of things, and particularly as you got down to that, how do you get there?
Uh-huh.
Subordinate planning to me, I guess my parlance or my term always for that was guidance. So we talked about the same kind of thing, like, what resources, things are getting allocated to those subordinates.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah. So if it's a large organization, you would have another piece in it. I would call it budget. So you would have this budget. You need to have a budget exercise in there too, making certain, particularly, it's one thing for the marketing department to decide on that they need a $50,000 a month marketing budget and to have it. Then they'll have to negotiate that with the other people that want $50,000 a month. That's a very good point. I didn't bring that up. Most of the people on these calls, Nick, tend to be smaller business owners. So budgeting would be just the total amount kind of a deal. That was an excellent question. Thank you.
To be honest with you, for doing it as long as I have, sometimes the smaller guys would benefit from that as well, because they get to zero a lot faster.
Yeah. Anything else?
Let me see. Let me wander through there.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, it's saying in that same piece, if you could get into a little more, like, you kind of lost me a little bit when you were setting individual goals, I guess, also in the same how you're going to get there section.
Right.
I always had in mind or used a kind of already, there's a basic job description in place for what everybody on a team.
Yeah, so we wouldn't go reiterate that. No, that wouldn't be it. So what it would be, so the kind of goals we're talking about is not as I commit, I'm going to do my job as chief financial officer. That wouldn't be it. Instead, it would be a goal like, so for example, one of the things could be that that we decide we need to borrow $5 million. So the chief financial officer might say, okay, I commit to having a short list of 5 potential financing sources by the end of the first quarter. So that wouldn't have been his job description. It would have simply said something like in charge of maintaining responsibility for bank relationships or something like that. So that's a great question. So these goals would not be job description reiterations, but things that are being committed to vis-a-vis the plan for the company.
You're making more specifics. I mean, we know finance is probably good. You're not going to go to the tech guy or to the product development guy to go find those 5, relationships, but now you're giving something specific to finance that would fall under their category.
Yeah. And then the same thing happens in the subordinate planning meetings. And that is, now we're down a level but I always want the subordinate meetings to be after the main meeting, so that the department manager has been in the main meeting, so knows we're going to be doing 2.5 million this year. So we need, let's say we're in operations, so we need to figure out how to buy enough parts to build the machines that we can sell for a total of 2.5 million. So that's it. Great question. Anything else?
Yeah, last one for me, as you were going there. Part part of the stuff I've done with annual planning before is we kind of took the C-level guys, I guess, everybody who's over
Yeah.
the particular function first to kind of get the things, lined out, and then you go into the breakout. So we have the whole day of marketing is talking to marketing, et cetera, and then they come back the following to
Yeah,
say,
I don't do it that way. I'm too much in a hurry, Nick. So even with billion-dollar companies, there's a lot of, particularly if I've got a lot of corporate type people in there, they want to go through all this stuff and have a full week and all that. So no, I say, look, we're going to do this in a day. So we're going to go fast, and I let people kind of verbalize stuff, but then I crash the universe down to that 5, and all the discussions are over. And so it can get it done in a day. I even literally, Nick, will do. I got a lot of PC firms, private capital firms. So we'll plan the whole portfolio on day 1, and the next day we'll get all those various businesses together. And the next full day, and I and the CEO of the private capital, we go around and facilitate all 8-10 meetings. It's really fun.
Yep.
Okay, we only got 2 minutes left. Bruce, any questions from you, sir?
Yes. These are simple logistic ones. Where can I see this video? Because your video section on the new website has nothing in it.
Yeah, it'll be uploaded. It's being recorded, so it'll be up there. When I've only got my staff's small, only 3 people, and so they'll get them up there. It took a lot of effort to move over this new site.
No worries. No, I think the new site's great. I'm really excited about it. Could you also flash up the last slide that had 5 and 6 on it?
5 and 6.
Yes, please.
5 and 6. You mean page 5 and 6?
Yeah, so the steps 5 and 6. It was I think the last page that you showed, and I didn't grab that, and I want to share this with my wife.
Oh,
if that's not too difficult.
There is no 6. Okay, so the key is it's actually page 4 and 5. So
well, whatever page it is, it's the page that had your last 2 steps.
I now know what you mean, but I just realized I misnumbered. Where's my
worries.
Where's my
and then to follow on about the subordinates was the C-level people talking with their team, so that if they're responsible for a marketing issue or a web issue, that the people that are involved in that now take part in it and support the leader who agreed to a certain time frame of delivery. Was that what you meant by subordinates?
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Yeah, so the word C-suite may not fit, Bruce.
Well, no, I understand.
But I know what you mean. Yeah, exactly, precisely. Okay, so here we go. Right here. Here we go. So actually, this is 4 and this is 5 because there's only 5 total. 4, 5. Okay, and so your question is revolving which now? You're going to ask me another question, a follow-up question about this page, Bruce?
I literally just wanted to see it.
Oh, you just want to see it? Okay.
I wanted to see it to make sure I had it.
Can you take a screenshot?
I just did.
Okay, perfect. Excellent.
That's what I was trying to do. I'm sorry I didn't say that.
Okay, good. We're all done. So I'm going to wrap it up, boys. So in conclusion, let's focus on a single fact, and that is this. Our businesses do not become extraordinary in a single moment. Instead, they get the result of the owner first learning and then applying a proven combination of having the right mindset, of a dedication to a system of management, and number 3, leveraging high performance teams. Thanks for being with us today. Great to have you here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys can stick.